So you're thinking about moving to Bellingham, Washington, or more specifically Lynden, Washington? Well, in this video, I'm going to take you inside the computer using Google Maps, show you all around Lynden, Washington to see if it might be a good fit for you. And you're not going to want to miss it, so let's get after it right now. If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about eating, sleeping, playing, working, as well as the good and bad about living in Bellingham, Washington, and more specifically Lynden, Washington, then subscribe below and tap the bell icon for notifications so you can be the first to know about the current market in Bellingham, Washington, and more specifically Lynden, Washington. My name is Dale Servicek, and I'm with the Living in Bellingham, Washington team, and every day we get calls, texts, and emails from people just like you, and we love it. So whether you're thinking of moving in 9 days or 90 days, give us a call, shoot us a text, or send us an email. We'd be happy to help you make that smooth move to the Bellingham or Lynden, Washington area. So welcome to the Lynden, Washington map tour here in Google Maps. And as you can see, here is Lynden, Washington. And in relation to Bellingham, you can see just south, about a half an hour on 539 or the Hannigan Road. 539 is known as Guide Meridian. You will get to the Bellingham area. You can see you're relatively close to the water over here as well. And you can see some of the other communities, Birch Bay right here, which I've done a vlog tour and a map tour, Google Map tour, so you can check those out at my channel, Living in Bellingham, Washington. And I've done a few other map tours and vlog tours of various communities throughout Whatcom County. And coming up in the next few months, I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time doing Google Maps tours of all the neighborhoods and areas within Bellingham. There's probably about 30 different distinct neighborhood communities, doing vlog tours, walking around, showing you some of the highlights, the parks, the wonderful things once the weather gets a little bit warmer in the spring here. And zooming in a little bit closer, you can see the Lynden city limits highlighted by these dotted red lines across here. Lynden is a fairly big town. It's the second largest town in Whatcom County at just over 16,000 people, second only to Bellingham, Washington. And again, like I said, it's fairly close to the Canadian border. As I come up here, you can see this is 539, otherwise known as Guide Meridian, is one of 4 border crossings in Whatcom County, smack dab in the middle there. And I'd say it's probably the 3rd busiest. The 1st and 2nd busiest would definitely be over here in Blaine. About 20 minutes, you got Peace Arch right here, and you got the truck crossing right here. And then of course, back to the Lynden one. And then if you go a little bit further east, we come to the town of Sumas, which I've done a vlog and map tour on that as well, but you can see that's the 4th crossing. So you got some options there. So Lynden is not quite considered a border town. I like to say people end up in Lynden not by accident, because it's really not on the way to anywhere. So even if you are coming up, let's say from Seattle, and you decide that you want to take the Lynden crossing and you come up Guide Meridian, otherwise known as State 539, you're not going to go actually into the main part of the downtown Main Street residential and commercial area unless you decide to cut across over here. Of course, we'll talk a little bit more in this video. One of the biggest events in the county, actually probably in the state, 200,000 people come to the Northwest Washington Fair every year. So pretty much a madhouse when you bring in 200,000 people to little sleepy Lynden of 15,000, 16,000 people in the matter of a week, and that takes place in August. It is a lot of fun. And moving along to distances from Lynden to some of the more common areas, as I like to say, airports that you might want to fly out of. If you're flying out of Bellingham International Airport on Alaska Airlines or Allegiant, a lot of people fly to Vegas or Los Angeles. Non-stop flights from Bellingham, which is really nice because you don't have to have any connections. But if you are going to fly out of Bellingham or you drive to Bellingham for work or groceries, you're looking at about a 30-minute drive. And it's going to be a straight shot down 539, otherwise known as Guide Meridian, or Hannigan Road, which is right here. These are basically parallel roads running into Bellingham. I worked in Bellingham for 3 years when I first moved here in 2000, and I lived in Lynden right about here. So every morning I drove to work and back home down Hannigan, and I really enjoyed it. It was a nice drive. It allowed me to kind of decompress before getting to work and then going back. Again, these roads are not very busy either, even during quote unquote rush hour. So 30 minutes is pretty much going to be what it takes. And then moving to Seattle, if you're going to be flying out of Seattle, or again, if you work in Seattle or like to go shopping, spend some time doing some of the fun activities down in Seattle, you're looking at about a 2-hour drive. You can get it down to as short as an hour and 40 minutes, depending on what time of the day, what day you're looking at. It can be as long as 2.5 hours if you're trying to come out of Seattle back up north, you know, in that 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock range in the afternoon. It can get pretty busy around Everett. But overall, it's not a very stressful drive. They do have express lanes, so if there's 2 people in the car, you can take those carpool lanes. And then right in, as you come into downtown Seattle, there are actually, what I meant to say earlier was express lanes, which will divert traffic if you, again, have more than 2 people in the car, and it really speeds things up to get into the core of Seattle or to go beyond if you're going to Tacoma or down a little bit further to Portland. If you ever do need to get to Portland I know is about a 5-hour drive to get down here from the Bellingham area. So that gives you an idea there. And then lastly, Vancouver, British Columbia. A lot of people do fly out of Vancouver Airport, International Airport. There's a lot of great flights. Sometimes with the dollar exchange between Canada and the United States, you can pick up some discounted tickets, so to speak. Flying out of Vancouver, because there are a lot of flights that leave Vancouver and come back into the United States as international flights. Or of course, a lot of people will take flights out of Vancouver over to Asia or to Europe. There are of course tons of international flights out of Seattle as well, but you just have to check and see which ones fit your schedule and which ones fit your budget the best, where you get the best value. So leaving from Lynden, again, you're gonna cut across here, pick up by 5, cross the border at Peace Arch or truck crossing, or like I said before, depending on what you feel like, you can cross in Lynden, which would bring you up here to Canada 1, and then you cut across here. It's gonna take a little bit longer maybe, and you might run into a little bit more traffic on Canada 1, but again, it just depends on the time of day. You're looking at about an hour and a half to hour and 45 minutes, and that would definitely be using the Nexus card. As I've mentioned before, if you don't know what a Nexus card is, definitely think about applying for one. It would only cost $50, lasts you 5 years. You do have to live on a state that borders Canada or Mexico to be qualified to buy a Nexus card. It gets you into designated lanes at the border coming into Canada as well as coming back, which will save you a ton of time. Sometimes there's only 2 or 3 cars in the Nexus lane, and there's like 50 to 100 cars in the non-Nexus lane. So definitely worth getting it, even if you think you're not gonna use it that much. Keep in mind, everyone in the car has to have their own Nexus card. So if you have a family of 3 or 4 or 5 or 10, every single person that's in that car has to have a Nexus card. If you have friends coming with you, they have to have Nexus cards. Otherwise, everybody's gotta wait in the slow lane. And then one other thing that's cool about the Nexus card is it gives you automatic TSA pre-check on domestic flights. So you can sometimes go through those fast security lines that will save you a lot of time. You don't have to take off your shoes and your belt and everything like that. So keep that in mind. And moving on to the population, which we did mention already, Lynden has a population of just over 16,000 people. It's the 2nd largest town in Whatcom County, second only to Bellingham. You can see since 1990, you know, there's been approximately 5,000 people. So it has essentially tripled in size in the last 30 years, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. I would say the number one reason that Lynden has grown so much is because, again, it's kind of in a flat area. There's a lot of farmland and there's area around Lynden to build. So they've done a lot of new construction where when you get to Bellingham, there's some geographical boundaries such as the Bellingham Bay in the water, and then to the south is the beginning of mountains. It's a little bit tougher to build in Bellingham. Plus, I would say Lynden is going to be a little more builder friendly as far as issuing building permits. So there's been a lot of growth in Lynden. Lynden has really kind of broken some of the stereotypes over the last 30, 40 years that it's had. Of course, it being a very strong Dutch heritage. Back in the day, people a lot of times said that, you know, if you weren't Dutch, you weren't much. Haha. Anyways, so it was kind of one of those things where it was a very close-knit community, shall I say. And it probably stayed that way for a long time. But really in the last 30 years, I moved there 20 years ago as an outsider, and no, I'm not Dutch, and I felt quite welcome. I actually had a wife at the time that was not of Caucasian descent, and she was welcomed quite well as well into Lynden, and I raised 2 kids there, and it was just a great place to live. I moved out of Lynden about 10 years ago, and so definitely still like to go back and visit. But Lynden is a great community, and you can see that by its rapid growth. We're literally tripling in size in the last 30 years. And moving back to the Google Maps, we're going to do a quick overview of Lynden in general on the map here, some of the surrounding areas to give you a bird's eye view of Lynden, and then we'll zoom in and take a little closer look at some of the specifics like parks, schools, restaurants, events, and the real estate in the area. But in general, Lynden, like I said, it's close to the Canadian border. So across here, you got the Canadian border up here. And over here, you got I-5, which I would say more than likely, if you live in Lynden, you're not gonna drive over to I-5 to head south. You're gonna come down 539 to go to Bellingham, or you're gonna come down Hannigan Road to go to Bellingham. If you wanna go east to, let's say, Sumas, let's say you're gonna pick up the border crossing in Sumas, you're gonna take 546 over here. Of course, there's quite a bit of new construction of homes over here in the Lynden area, which is not quite incorporated yet, but I'm sure it's on its way, because Lynden is definitely growing this way for sure. And let's see, what else do we got here? Of course, we got Bellingham to the south. Weiser Lake is a nice little lake that you can go to. There's some fishing. There's a lot of houses around this particular lake. The Nooksack River, of course, one of the major rivers that comes out of the Mount Baker area, the Snoqualmie Glacier National Forest. The water from those big mountains out there drain this way, and they come down all the way and spill into Bellingham Bay. Of course, a lot of the land that you see around Lynden here is going to be farmland. It's going to be comprised mostly of raspberries and blueberries. There's a lot of, I believe, alfalfa, a lot of fields where they bale hay. There's a lot of low-lying fields. Like this whole area floods quite a bit. Not like homes, but because they have the homes built up. But the farmland floods from the Nooksack River usually maybe once or twice a year, and it goes away pretty quick, but that's what leaves this such fertile land. Lynden, of course, is raised up higher, so you're not going to run into flooding in this particular area here. And zooming in a bit closer, you can see the grids here. Of course, you got Main Street running along here, which Main Street doesn't really feel like a main street that you would think of. I would actually say that Front Street is going to feel more like that Main Street feel coming through here, especially because right in here is all of the small businesses, storefronts, post office, all those types of stores that feel more like a main street right in here. And then of course you have a lot of older homes in these grid neighborhoods here, built around anywhere from the turn of the century, like 1900s up through the 1950s. There's a lot of new construction down in these particular areas in here, which were built probably in the last 20 years closer to the river. And of course, there's a lot of new construction that's gone in this particular area in the last 20 or 30 years. You have the golf course, Homestead Country Club, a lot of really nice homes in here. There's actually an airport, small airport here, and there's homes along here that actually have their own hangars. So if you have a private plane, you just pull your plane out of your hangar garage and just take off, which is kind of cool. Another big sports complex, got fields here. Of course, we're going to go more into detail some of this stuff. A lot of new construction in this general area. I used to live right around here in Greenfield Village. Started around, I would say, the mid 1990s, and then of course there's tons of new construction in the last 5 years that's gone in out here that is just booming. So I can think that Lynden will continue to grow this way. If it grows further, I don't see it growing so much this direction, but definitely Lynden is growing quickly. And zooming in even closer, we're going to take a closer look at some of the restaurants, places to eat in Lynden. There are a lot of them, and I am a bit of a foodie, so I have eaten at quite a few. I'd love to give you my thoughts. So coming up on 539, which is a guide meridian coming north into Lynden from the Bellingham area, of course you got some of your chain restaurants. You got Popeyes, and a little bit further north you have Starbucks. You've got Jack in the Box right here. Taco Time, which if you're not from the Northwest, you've probably never heard of Taco Time. It's basically like somewhere in between Taco Bell and a nice sit-down Mexican restaurant. It's kind of in between. It's like gourmet fast food Mexican, which is definitely, it's good. They got some unique things there. Of course, there is a staple in the Whatcom County area or the Northwest. We got Bob's Burger and Brew. I believe this was the very first one ever, and they have probably 7 or 8 different locations throughout Whatcom County and Skagit County, which is the next one south. Great burgers. They kind of specialize in about 10 varieties of really good big beef burgers, and then they have a whole selection of 10 or 12 different varieties of chicken burgers, but they got a lot of your fried stuff like fish and chips, salads, great cocktails. They have a bar area with good bar food and happy hour. Definitely want to check that place out. Of course, Burger King, McDonald's, Dairy Queen. Got Coconut Kenny's right here, which is great. In the summer, they have a big wall that they put a movie up in, I think it's once a week, and they bring in kids and movies and stuff like that you can watch for free. Got Jake's Barbecue, which is another good one. El Ranchito Family Restaurant. This place has been open for a long time. When I lived in Lynden, we used to eat here probably every week. Very good, great fajitas. And then actually, as you go a little bit further north, you got I keep saying Main Street, but it's essentially Front Street, which is the Main Street feel. You come through the cemetery here, you got Grant's Burgers, which has got good burgers there. And of course, the Northwest Washington Fairgrounds is gonna be right here. There's no restaurants in there, but as we come down closer to this district for the businesses, Woods Coffee, which is a great local coffee shop that's grown quite a bit in the last 25 years. They started in Lynden and they've spread all the way almost, I think maybe down into Seattle as well. Great coffee, they roast their own coffee. Fairway Cafe, which has been around forever. They got good breakfast, but I wouldn't necessarily personally recommend that place. But definitely if you like kind of that breakfast food, that you can go in and see people that have been going there for the last 30 or 40 years, the same people every morning, then that's the place to check out. There's another Mexican restaurant right here. And coming down through the residential area as we get closer to what I would say downtown Lynden, we've got the Mill, which is a great little restaurant. There's a Thai restaurant, which I'd recommend. These are inside of the big windmill. If you ever see the giant windmill, that's gonna be the location of those. Lynden Dutch Bakery. This place has been in the same location and been open for over 100 years. They recently remodeled during COVID, which I wasn't super excited about the remodel. I get it, it makes sense for their business inside, but up until 2020, when you went in there, it basically looked exactly the way it would have looked 100 years ago. It's just a really cool place to get a lot of good baked goods, bread, fresh breads, donuts. You can go in and get sandwiches. Can bring up some pictures here. So here's pictures of the outside looking from the street. And there we go. Take a closer look. Oh, this is the way it looked back when they before they remodeled. That's the way it looked. And here gives you an idea of some of the nice baked goods that they have. Some great sandwiches, a lot of breads to pick from. They are also known for their pies. They make some amazing, amazing pies. The caramel apple pie, the Dutch apple pie, just absolutely amazing pies. Probably the best I've ever tasted in the Whatcom County area. I've tried a couple other places. These are amazing, amazing pies. As a matter of fact, one year for all my real estate clients that we closed that year, I bought a pie for Thanksgiving for every single one of them and delivered them, and everybody raved about those pies. They can also cater for large parties and gatherings, as you can see by this giant sub sandwich. And we also have Avenue Bread, which is relatively new to the Lynden area. Avenue Bread started in Bellingham, but about 5 years ago, this particular commercial building right on this corner here caught on fire. It was an old building. It had an Italian restaurant on the second floor, and it had some shops and antique shops. Basically, it gutted the whole place. And when they rebuilt this building area, this whole block about 3 or 4 years ago, they put some cool businesses in. And Avenue Bread came in, and there's also a bookstore. This particular place is really cool. Let's bring some pictures. They've got a lot of good food to eat. And of course, the bookstore is right next door. So you can see the inside, they've got a loft area. It's just a great place to come, have some great sandwiches with your friends, then walk next door. They've got a lot of great books. They've got a lot of gift cards too. So if you're looking for those unique gift cards, I would recommend to go check out that area and to pick up some stuff there. Oh, and we can't forget, if you still like to roller skate, they have Lynden Skateway right here. It's a great place to go. It took me back to the 80s in my childhood that they still have a skating rink that's indoor, that's pretty much just like it was back in the 80s. And moving a little bit further down here, we have Rustler's Front Street Grill, which used to be Dutch Mother's restaurant. Dutch Mother's was, gosh, it's been open for decades, but I believe in 2020, a family purchased it, changed it to Rustler's. They kept all the same typical food. There's a lot of Dutch food. There's the Dutch pancakes, and it's still a great hangout for a lot of people to go for coffee and breakfast, or big family get-togethers for dinners. You got Ciro's Greek Italian restaurant, which again has been there for quite a long time. They have some great Italian food, great Greek food. They got a nice bar area on the other side. There's kind of 2 doors that you can go in. Nice little bar area to go watch the game and get some great appetizers. And I wanted to show you some of the food in Ciro's. Of course, they've got a lot. There's their spaghetti. They got great pizza, a lot of variety of food, salads, just you name it. Heroes, that's what you call it. Fettuccine, nachos. I would definitely say that it's one of those places. It's been around for a long time, so it's not necessarily super fancy inside, but it's very comfortable. The food's good. It's reasonably priced. A place like this wouldn't stay open this long if they didn't serve good food. This is usually what I ordered, the lasagna. I would highly recommend it, and if you can eat it all, more power to you. And some of the other places, I've never been to Dutch Street Restaurant here, but I know it's pretty popular. It's been open for probably 50, 60 years. I believe it's one of those places that serves great breakfast. You see a lot of regulars that are going by in there. There's the Lynden Mandarin Chinese. I've been there a couple times. Pretty typical Chinese food. And heading a little bit further north, one of my favorite places, we come up here north of Bender Fields. We've got Nami Asian Bistro. If you like sushi or kind of fusion Asian food, I definitely recommend Nami. They've got great sushi rolls, good variety. There's the Nut House Grill, which is a cool place that serves you peanuts in the shell, and you eat them at the table while you're waiting and throw your shells all over the floor, which is kind of one of their cool things about that place. They got another Woods Coffee here. And moving over to the Country Club, the Homestead Country Club, Steakhouse 9. I've eaten there one time and it was amazing. It's one of the best steakhouses in Whatcom County. I would say a close challenger would be the steakhouse at the Silver Reef Casino, which we will feature probably when we do a video on the Ferndale area. But definitely Steakhouse 9 is right up there with one of the best. So if you got a nice date or a very special occasion, I would check out Steakhouse 9. And moving along to the schools in the Lynden area. So there's gonna be two main routes that your kids are gonna take. There's the Lynden Christian System, which has an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school, all within a tight little area right here. And it is a private school, so you're gonna pay monthly for those. Actually, I believe it's annually. Again, my kids didn't go. I've got friends that have sent them there, but I think you're looking somewhere in the neighborhood of about $5,000 per student per year, not per month, per year. So I believe it's relatively inexpensive, from my understanding, for a private school, but definitely that's the one option. And then of course there's the public school system, which has a brand new middle school that they built out here, which is really nice, probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And then they have the high school, which is right here, and this has been there for quite a while, but they've done some remodeling. And then there are a few elementary schools. So Vospec is here in Greenfield Village. It's been there for about 30 years, 25, 30 years. You have Fisher Elementary, which is right here. Again, it's another school that's been open for quite a while. And then you have Isom Elementary, which I believe is probably the newest one that's right here. So yeah, for the school systems, I've heard nothing but good things about the school systems. Of course, Lynden High School is really big into their sports. So if you're looking for those Friday night lights with football, definitely, I would say, since the football field is right here, I would say do not buy any houses around here unless you're okay with seeing lights on Friday night in the evenings and hearing roars of crowds for football games. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but just keep that in mind if you're looking at buying in these general areas here. And let's take a closer look at some of the park in the Lynden, Washington area. So way out here we have Berthelsen Park, which is a nice little park. It's where they have their annual tractor show. It's basically a big event over the weekend where they have all these antique tractors that have been restored. So it's a cool little activity. There's a lot of trails you can hike around out here. Here's some pictures, gives you a general idea of what the area looks like. It's very wooded. There's one of those tractors. There's some more tractors. I think I've only been to this about once or twice. It's one of those things where, you know, you can go once or twice even if you're not into tractors, and it's a lot of fun, but after that it's pretty much the same thing. It's kind of like when you go to the car shows, classic car shows in your area. You go the first few times, it's really cool, and then you see pretty much the same cars there every time. And moving over closer to inside the city limits, you have the Jim K. McSenior Trail, which is not really a park, but it basically winds through the town. It's a nice little walking area that you can walk on, and it cuts through the city park, which is really nice. So it's a fun little park or trail to walk on to connect to various parks. There's Bender Fields, which I already talked about, has a lot of the sports plexes for like softball and soccer. They have all the big soccer tournaments there on the weekends in the summer months, as well as softball and baseball. They've got playground equipment as well. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit closer on this. So yeah, you can see this is Bender Fields with playground equipment. They've got tennis courts, and you can see here's concession near the softball complex. Let's find some pictures of the actual softball fields here. Here it gives you a little bit of an idea. It looks like they've got some stuff going on there. So yeah, soccer fields, like I mentioned as well. You can see big soccer fields is definitely where they have all that activity for the kids. and adult leagues and such. And we have the Lynden City Park, which is a beautiful city park. They did a lot of work to this probably about 7 or 8 years ago. They put this huge playground equipment. It's just a great park. It's probably one of the nicest ones. I remember going to Lynden City Park before they remodeled it with my kids, and it kind of had the old 1940s, 1950s playgrounds that most of the kids would hurt themselves on, you know, like the slide that you had to climb like 10 flights of stairs to get up to the top, and it was a skinny little slide. It was fun stuff, but they got rid of that and put some of this newer stuff. They got a nice creek that runs through here. It stays pretty full year round, which is really nice. It's very peaceful and gives a nice serene feel. There's tennis courts in the area. And yeah, so definitely check out Lynden City Park. I would highly recommend going there. It has a lot to do, and it's just a great place. They got covered pavilions for picnics and barbecues. You could have birthday parties there. You can see the kids are even playing in there on a hot day. So definitely check out Lynden City Park. And I wanted to give you a closer look at the Jim Kamick Senior Trail that winds through Lynden, just to give you an idea. It goes through a lot of neighborhoods. You can see here, it's just a really nice walking trail. They've got some activities for the kids along the way. You can see here's where it's cutting through Lynden City Park, which is a place where it has, you know, place for kids to jump in the water, for animals to play. You can see here's some other shots of what's along the way. And then this is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's going to be at Bender Fields. Again, some residential homes along the way, more paths. So yeah, definitely Lynden, Jim Kamick Senior Trail is a lot of fun. Oh yeah, they got volleyball too, one of my fun passports. So definitely check that out if you like volleyball. And every year in July, they have the Northwest Raspberry Festival in Lynden, Washington. And they basically transform Front Street, or as I like to call Main Street. They close it off, tons of vendors, businesses open, selling their goods, crafts. They have a big basketball tournament. I believe last year they had over 230 teams. It's just amazing. It's kids all the way from kindergarten all the way through adult and senior divisions. They've got a parade. Pretty much everything is raspberry themed. They've got raspberry beer, they've got raspberry wine, they've got all sorts of raspberry desserts. They have a big car show. So I would say this is probably, besides the Northwest Washington Fair, this has got to be the biggest event in Lynden for sure. They even have the raspberry pancakes that they have the pancake feed on Saturday morning at the senior center. This here gives you an idea. This is the parade on Front Street. Ice cream, just you name it. It's a lot of fun. They got music, so definitely check out the Raspberry Festival. And I also mentioned the Northwest Washington Fair, which comes every August. We're excited to see this back. It is a lot of fun. It brings in 200,000 people, and pretty much you can see by this aerial view, if you've been to a big fair, this is a big fair. They've got grandstands where they bring in, you know, very popular country music singers. They have monster truck shows. They have demolition derby is a big event every year. They have 2 showings of that where local businesses and communities and people put together old cars and bang them up in the demo derby. They got all the fun things for the kids. The fairs, you can buy day passes for the tickets for the rides. You can buy individual tickets. They've got tons of great food, animals, horses, cows. They have Clydesdales, you name it. It's probably one of the better fairs that I've been to. It's a lot of fun, so definitely check that out in August. And every Christmas, they have the Lynden Washington Lighted Christmas Parade, which goes down Front Street / Main Street as well, and they really do it up. The one thing I can say about Lynden is when they do something, they don't do it halfway. They do it 110%. And I mean everything, whether it's, you know, keeping their front yard and their lawns looking nice, everything is just perfect and pristine. So they take a lot of pride in their parades as well. So you can see from some of these pictures that it's a beautiful parade. And I would encourage you to check that out. Bring the kids. They've got hot cocoa and cider. A lot of the restaurants stay open late, so it's a good time. And in the summer, they have another parade. It's Farmers Day Parade, where they bring out a lot of cool farm equipment and tractors, because of course Lynden is a very agriculturally based community with raspberries. Of course, you know, as I mentioned before, raspberries, Lynden, Washington, Whatcom County in general, considered the raspberry capital of the world. So per capita, I think more raspberries come out of Whatcom County than anywhere else. You can see this picture right here. Is a company, I believe it used to be called Corvan, and then it changed to Oxbow, but they make a special harvester right here in Lynden. It was designed and invented here a number of decades ago, that's designed to pick raspberries and blueberries They also make ones, I think, for other areas that pick grapes as well. So those are pretty cool. So now moving along to real estate. So Lynden Washington, as I mentioned, has seen quite a bit of growth in the last 30 years. It's pretty much tripled in size. In 1990, census had them at about 5,000. Here we are 32 years later, and we're over 16,000 people. So again, a lot of that growth has taken place in some of the new construction areas to the east of town here that used to be pastures and different fields have now become giant neighborhoods. So a lot of that growth has happened out there. You can see in the last, these are the houses for sale. So there's currently 47 homes for sale in the Lynden area, which you can see here. That's the core area. And then of course we've got the mailing address. So there's some properties out in the county. And looking at the list of those homes, they're gonna range here. It looks like the least expensive is $469,000. and the most expensive ones being upwards of the mid 1 million range. And moving along to the homes that have sold in the last 6 months, there's been quite a few. 127 homes have sold in the Lynden area. So again, showing that despite interest rates doubling, it is still a very, very strong market. So if you put your house on the market and you price it correctly, it will sell. We've seen it just takes a little bit longer. I know listings I've had in the Lynden area recently, a year ago, you put it on the market, get multiple offers, and it would be sold in 3 days. Now you put it on the market and it gets a few showings. And then after about 30 to 45 days is when you think the average time is when you'd expect to get an offer. And it's probably not gonna be full price unless you just lowered the price. But it's still, if you have a nice home and you price it right, it will sell, as shown here in the last 6 months. 127 homes have sold. And the range on those prices have been anywhere from $370,000 all the way up to, I believe, into the 2 million range. No, actually still the 1.1, 1.2, 1.6 million range for homes sold in the last 6 months. And moving along to the median sale price of closed homes, the average median sale price. So back in 2019, it was around $360,000. So 3 years ago, $369,000. Of course, we saw beginning of 2020, that number started to go up as interest rates went down. And now, looking at where we're at now, we're looking at $542,000 as a median sale price. When you compare that to Bellingham, is probably closer to $600,000. So Lynden is still a great value at only about a 25-30 minute drive. That was one of the reasons why I bought in Lynden back in 2000 when I first moved here 22 years ago. Was because I got a whole lot more house in Lynden and I didn't mind the drive. It was a nice drive, it wasn't that far. So if that sounds like you and you'd like to live in a small town or a small town feel but work in Bellingham, Lynden is a great option. They got good grocery stores, tons of restaurants, tons of amenities. So you really wouldn't need to go to Bellingham if you didn't work there. If you needed groceries, all that kind of stuff is going to be right there in Lynden. And the last graph for real estate is the months of inventory, otherwise known as absorption rate. And again, we've seen, 3 years ago, the months of inventory being around that 4 to 5 months of inventory, which is closer to a balanced market. A balanced market, which means it's not really a buyer's market or not really a seller's market. It's a nice balanced market, is around that 6 to 7 months of inventory. So even 3 years ago, it was a bit of a seller's market. But of course, as interest rates started to plummet after the beginning of 2020, we saw, more and more buyers saying, hey, I want to buy because interest rates are so low. And we had less and less sellers putting their houses on the market because they're like, I don't see a lot of other stuff for sale, so where am I going to move? So pretty much the people that sold were the people that had to sell, either moving out of the area for jobs or life circumstances, whatever the reasons were. So we saw this is where you're getting multiple offers, bidding wars and such. And then around the beginning of this year, as interest rates started to go up and more concern about the economy, we're starting to see the months of inventory go back up, which means the interest rates are higher. The buyers are a little more nervous and more sellers are coming on the market because they don't know what's going to happen in the future. So we're starting to see a trend towards a more balanced market, but we're still in a strong seller's market, but it's also a great time to buy. For those of you buyers out there who might be thinking, well, do I really want to pay a 6 or 7% mortgage rate? Well, the old saying in real estate is you marry the house and you date the rate. So keep in mind, right now you can buy homes right now that are 10% lower than they were this summer. So if you can save 10% on a $500,000 house, that means you're saving $50,000. So even if you're paying a few extra $100 more on your mortgage payment right now because the interest rate's higher, well, there's a good chance in the next 3 or 4 years that the interest rates are going to come down a bit or get better, and you refinance, but you still locked in that lower sale price that you were able to pick up right now. So it's definitely a great time to buy or sell. I'm helping buyers and sellers every day get properties sold and people getting into homes that they really enjoy. Actually, it's to tip my hand a little bit. It's the day before Christmas right now, and I literally just penned a listing the day before Christmas, and we've had a snowstorm for the last 3 days. So people are buying and selling no matter what time of the year it is and no matter what the market's doing. So anyways, thanks for sticking around.